Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for making a special trip to be with us today. I'm going to call the board meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Babs to do a roll call.
Good morning, everyone. Before I do that, I want to remind everyone you've got your mics in front of you. Green light means that it's on and live. Hit the button for it not to be live. Now I'll call the roll. Director Clark.
Here.
Director Finn.
Here.
Director Floyd.
Here.
Director Land.
Present.
Director Laird. Director Mudge.
Present.
Director Pennell.
Present.
Director Singleton.
Here.
Director Wynn.
Here.
Chairman Ray.
Here. Okay. Well, for the board members that made the trip, thank you for being here, and those on the phone, obviously, thank you for taking time out of your day. The first thing I'd like to do is, obviously, we're going to do an invocation and a roll call. I'm sorry, an invocation and a pledge. And since it's Memorial Day, and this is, I guess, my first meeting as acting chair, I want to take a minute of personal privilege and just reflect on the meaning of Memorial Day, the fact that, you know, it's the day where our country honors not only those who fought for our country, but those who fought and died for our country. And I want to highlight a special South Carolinian by the name of Ralph Johnson. Private First Class Ralph Johnson was a recon platoon member in Vietnam. He was led by a young Lieutenant Cleve McClary, and Ralph Johnson was involved in a firefight in 1968 in which he found himself in a foxhole with two fellow Marines, and a grenade ended up in his foxhole, and Private First Class Johnson jumped on the grenade and gave his life for his fellow Marines. And so I want to make sure that we not only honor Private First Class Johnson as we think about Memorial Day, but all those who gave their lives for the values and freedom that we enjoy today. So I've asked his platoon leader, Cleve McClary, who's a direct serve customer of Santee Cooper. He lives at Pawleys Island. He's a neighbor of mine. He's a friend of mine and has been a friend of our family for a long time. So I've asked him to lead us in prayer and also to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. So with that. Fantastic.
Hey, Dan, Ralph gave his life to save mine. Had 2 dead and 11 wounded. I just came back from spending most of the month of April in Vietnam in mission work. First time I've been able to go back to that hill. And I took my daughter with me and we found it. But we named the VA hospital in Charleston after him 50 years ago. I was treated in Charleston about 15 years ago with Mare Valley. And last year, March a year ago, Commandant came and 6,200 people. And we named a $4 billion destroyer that you tax focus is still trying to pay for. And it's going to be commissioned in California, and my Congressman Tom Rice brought it to Charleston, and we commissioned it there. The big gun on that destroyer is named after our recon team, Texas Pete. And I know you military people like coins. That's a coin for that ship. Yeah, thankfully we be him.
Appreciate that.
Psalm says in 37:5, commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will do this. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we know what you got to do, and man, I just thank you for wonderful leadership that we've got represented here today. Dan's daddy taught me in Sunday school at home, and I've known him for a long time. And I know how he leads his family. I know how he respects and honored his parents and loved them. I've seen firsthand what he does on a plantation and taking care of game and ecology and the trees and wonderful work he's done there. It's the same at the beach at Prince George and at the house there in the city of Georgetown. And what an honor to be here today. I don't deserve to be here, but I just appreciate this opportunity. I thank you for Santee Cooper, man. I tell you, growing up on a plantation and a lot of the little cabins there, I spent many nights in. They had kerosene when I was a little boy, and I saw them put the first light pole up. And we owe y'all so much, and you've done so much for so many. And I just pray that, Lord, you give them the guidance. You got the leaders, and we'll be in your will. And we just thank you in advance for what you're going to do with this great company, with this great leadership. And we give you the glory for it all. In thy name we pray. Lord, my men walked by me on my supposed to be a deathbed in the MASH unit. The ones that could walk came by and they lay a plaque down by me. And on that plaque it said, in this world of give and take, there are not enough people willing to give what it takes. I thank you for our veterans like Dan and others that served to keep this country free. Thank you for the ones like Ralph and others that paid a supreme sacrifice. And we're alive today because of what they've done. And it's free enterprise system that we've got and enjoy, and I just pray we use it for your glory. In thy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
While everybody's standing, as Cleve gave me this coin, which is a tradition in the military, we actually have a Santee Cooper coin that we'd like to present back to Cleve. So I'm going to ask Clark Whetstone from our Security Services group to present him with the coin.
Lieutenant McClary, Chairman, Board, Executive Leadership, staff, it is my pleasure to present our challenge coin to you for your service to God and country.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, next on the agenda will be just a notification that we're making an appointment of Director Steve Mudge to both the Executive Corporate Planning Committee and also the Central Santee Cooper Executive Committee. And that does not require a vote, as I understand, so it's just a notification. Okay, with that, I'm going to recognize Richard Kaiser, who's going to give us a legislative update.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Please stop me at any time to ask questions and I can clarify. It was just 2.5 weeks ago that I was standing here in front of you discussing this same topic, and what I'll be discussing today is the final version of House Bill 4287. If you'll recall, when I was here 2.5 weeks ago, the Senate had just finished up several days of discussion of their version of 4287 and had sent it back to, was going to send it back to the House. The House received the Senate version. In short, the House amended it, sent it back to the Senate. The Senate non-concurred, and it ended up in what's called conference committee. So over the last, most of the activity on this in the last few weeks has been in a conference committee. 3 House members, 3 senators. The senators were Senator Massey, Senator Setzler, and Senator Rankin. The House members were Speaker Lucas, Chairman Smith, and Representative Russell Ott. And those 6 individuals have worked out the final version that I'll go over today. And what I have done is I've taken the presentation that I used 2.5 weeks ago when I went through in detail the provisions of the bill, and it tracks the same format. But I've taken that, and what I'm really going to point out today are the changes from 2.5 weeks ago or areas that received significant discussion in that period of time. If that's okay with you, I think that's going to be my approach, but I can drill down on anything if you want me to. I'll be glad to. So the proposal is pretty much the same. The outcome is the same. 4287 is a proposal that's going to use the Department of Administration to drive to 3 things. And it's going to be a process that's going to allow for purchase proposals for some or all of Santee Cooper. It's going to be a process to allow for management proposals of Santee Cooper, and it's going to create a process to allow for restructuring proposals of Santee Cooper, our own restructuring proposal. That was, at its core, that was in there before, and that is still in there now, okay? Again, these are slides that I went through the other week in detail, but I do want you to know it tracks the same format, and at the end of the day, the same outcome occurs. That's the three things that we're going to get. Sandra, can you help me?
It's like it's stuck. Oh, there we go.
I think I can do this. Oh, okay, here we go. Go forward one, please. Okay, so every time there's something in italics, again, that's going to be the change, okay? This was just a couple word change here. You know, everything that I talked about a few weeks ago, if you remember, it was around 20 years. Generation plans for 20 years, transmission plans for 20 years, financing for 20 years. And they added what was already in there as retail customer rates for 20 years, and they've just added retail customer rates and revenue requirements. That's something that the DOA will expect from prospective bidders when they put in a bid, is expected rates and revenue requirements for 20 years.
You can try it and see if it's working. Okay.
This provision, it states this was a House provision. The Senate had something similar, but they went with the House provision here, and it says the bidder's willingness to bear any cost required by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to mitigate market power resulting from an acquisition of Santee Cooper. So I think what they're trying to address here is, if Santee Cooper were to be purchased, FERC would have to do a study to determine if market power issues existed. And if FERC determined that market power issues did exist, what they're asking is, will you as a bidder do what's necessary to create or fund the infrastructure to keep that market power ability from existing? So the bidder would have to say, yes, if market power issues arise, we're willing to invest in whatever is necessary to keep that from occurring, okay? The Senate version was a little different, but this was the House version, and that's what they ended up adopting. Next one, please. So this was sort of a big change from where I was 2.5 weeks ago. This actually says that a bidder can bid for the lakes, the FERC license 199, if they so choose. When I was here 2.5 weeks ago, what the Senate had sent back to the House excluded that. It excluded the lakes, it excluded FERC 199 license, water project, and those kind of things. Now a bidder has the option. They can include it or they cannot include it. It's up to the bidder, okay? There was significant discussion on this during the conference committee, and I will tell you there was significant discussion on this on the floor of the Senate when it was presented there. I think what came out of that is most people expect that if someone puts in a bid to acquire Santee Cooper and the lakes, they will also have a bid to acquire Santee Cooper without the lakes. They would probably put in both, but there was significant discussion, and I would say significant concern on maintaining the lakes as they currently are and to the level that we maintain them and the continued public access that are there. There is a lot of concern there, and people want to make sure that that happens. This goes on to say this tracks some Senate language that was in there before that says, but if you don't take the lakes, the bidder would have to take the output of the hydro project and have a dedicated revenue stream to continue maintenance of the lakes at the level that Santee Cooper is currently doing. Okay? A lot of discussion on this one. No change on that. If you recall, a bidder would have to submit 7 years of regulatory filings in any states that they operate in. That is still in there. Again, the requirements on verifying information, those kind of requirements, that is still in there. Conduct a risk analysis, all of that the same. Right down here at the bottom. This was a House provision that they ended up tweaking slightly, and it actually says that, that they will designate a third party to administer the procurement and dissemination of information from Santee Cooper to third parties. There was a discussion here that, two parts here. One part is felt like they wanted someone independent to ensure that everyone was getting the same information the same way in an open process. All bidders, all proposals, everybody was getting the same information. There was original language here that said engage a third party, which made it sound like they would be required to go out and hire someone just to do this. They changed it to designate, so now they can designate someone that's already involved. As I take it, if they've hired one of these experts that's helping DOA in this process, they can designate them to fill this role. They don't necessarily have to engage someone new just to do this, okay? But this was new. This was not a provision that I discussed with you 2.5 weeks ago. The management proposal, there was no change in anything on the management proposal on what the criteria was for submitting a proposal or how it would be scored or evaluated by DOA. There was no change in anything on the management side. When you get to the Santee Cooper proposal, there were changes. There was language added, and sort of what they did is in areas of the Santee Cooper, they added what was in the section on a sale or what a bidder would have to do on financial requirements. They sort of took that, cut and paste, and added similar language in the Santee Cooper plan. It looks like a substantive change, but it just pretty much is tracking what was in other parts of the bill, but I will point out what they've done. So again, it's a 20-year plan, all of those things, but it originally said we would have to describe our assumptions that we were using in our plan. And they added language saying that that would also include projected financial ratios, debt to equity and debt service ratios, projected contribution percentages to the capital improvement fund, fuel costs, payments to the state, and other sums in lieu of taxes. So that was added, and then the next bullet was added, the amount of projected rates and revenue requirements for each customer class, including the plans to determine how these rates can be achieved. Again, that's similar language that's in the section on a bid. Obviously, they have tax things in theirs that we don't have in ours. We have a CIF in ours that they don't have. But what they've done is they mirrored an earlier section in the Santee Cooper section is what they did. They did the same thing under transmission. If you have additional transmission cost over 20 years, you have to describe the financial ratios, what that does to debt to equity, debt service, what that would do to CIF if there are additional plans to do transmission over a 20-year plan. They added under the evaluation criteria, they added two things here that says that they would do a projected financial impact on all customer classes for satisfaction of existing debt and issuing of new bonds. So they want to know, that would be a criteria that they have added. And they added a projection of jobs that Santee Cooper expects to eliminate within 5 years. Again, that's similar language that's in others sections on both a purchase proposal and a management proposal has some of that similar language in it, and now it's in the Santee Cooper section as well. And finally, on the Santee Cooper section, they say that that feasibility study or the analysis that DOA is doing and their experts, they'll compare our rate projections with other proposals on a comparable basis, and they'll conduct an analysis on the potential risk to South Carolina taxpayers, retail consumers, and bondholders. Okay? Concludes that section by saying, if the General Assembly picked the Santee Cooper proposal to go forward, and that was the route they would go of the three things that were submitted, then an annual report to the governor, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House would be required each year on what was going on. Okay? I noted in here 2.5 weeks ago, I believe, there's a section in there about Central and how Central negotiates and how Central will be involved with bidders going forward. The Senate version said that DOA would conduct. The House version said DOA would oversee. They ended up going with conduct language. So DOA and their experts will conduct this process. But the change they made here was that the original bill, when I was here 2.5 weeks ago, said that Central would be out there negotiating with DOA with anyone that submitted a purchase proposal, with anyone who put in a management proposal, and with Santee Cooper. The change in the conference report says that Central will negotiate with anyone who puts in a qualified bid. DOA and their experts are given the leeway to determine the qualified bids, and then Central would negotiate with, if it was a qualified bid for purchase, they negotiate there. If it's a qualified bid for management, they negotiate there. And if it's Santee Cooper's plan, they negotiate with us. So it's not everyone that comes in, it's just those found qualified. And it's a qualified bid, not a qualified bidder, okay? And DOA and their experts still fulfill the same role of making sure that everyone negotiates in good faith throughout this process.
Richard, I have one
Yes, sir.
question on that.
Okay?
I know sometimes it's implied or assumed. Do we know if the Commerce Clause is, in other words, is this negotiation subject to the Commerce Clause where that negotiation has to be equitable across all bidders as it relates to the central negotiation?
Director Ray, I did not hear a reference to Commerce Clause, but if I'm understanding your question correctly, the intent is that every conversation and the information is going to be consistent, and that's the role that DOA and their experts are going to fulfill. And that's the intent. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Basically, my question is that Central has to negotiate not only in good faith, but equitably with all the qualified bidders.
I believe that's the intent and what they're trying to accomplish here. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Another section that received considerable discussion is I skipped one. This top one, provided that a sale is successful, the General Assembly will not bind the Public Service Commission or the Office of Regulatory Staff to projected rates, okay? What they're trying to accomplish here is, remember, every bidder is putting forth, Santee Cooper as well, but everyone's put forward 20-year projections, okay? But that doesn't mean that if a bidder were to purchase Santee Cooper and they had 20-year rate schedule out there, that the General Assembly has bound itself or bound PSC to taking that 20-year rate projection, okay? It's a projection. It's not something that it binds the General Assembly. They could be going through that process with PSC. They could actually be higher. They could be lower out in outer years. Again, this had considerable discussion, and I think what I recall the discussion here was, although they are not bound by it, if somebody comes in and is significantly off in out years, they're going to have some serious explaining to do on why they are so much off, okay? So they're not going to hold them to it, but they expect them to be close. Where they think they would, obviously once you got down to negotiating a contract, there could be a contract that guarantees a 3 or a 5-year rate guarantee, but then after that, it would go through a PSC process that would track the proposals or track the projections, but they would not bind them to those projections, okay? And then the date. You'll see here that it says no later than January 15th, 2020, and subject to a one-time 60-day extension, these proposals will be submitted. Remember, DOA and their experts are going to submit one proposal, what they determine the one best proposal for a purchase of Santee Cooper. DOA and their experts are going to present one proposal that they believe is the best management plan for Santee Cooper, and then they're going to present the Santee Cooper proposal. The Senate plan that I discussed with you a couple weeks ago did not have a date certain. The House version that came back to the Senate had December 1st as a date certain. After a lot of discussions and conversations back and forth, the date is January 15th with an option of a 60-day extension if the Department of Administration comes back and tells the General Assembly that they need additional time, okay? But that's what will happen. They will do those things, and put forth one each, presumably January 15th or sometime before March 15th in this process.
Richard, so there's a hard stop on the 15th, subject to a one-time extension for 60 days. Whichever one of those dates prevails, how long before the legislature is deemed to have to vote on which they accept after that?
Great question. So when the proposal comes in to the committees, when these three proposals come to, and these three proposals will go to Ways and Means or Senate Finance, sometime between January 15th and March 15th, the committee has 30 days to act. The conference committee says the committee has 30 days to act and recommend one of the three proposals to their respective body. Once it gets to their respective body, normal rules of that body apply. So they would send something to the House floor, they would send something to the Senate floor, and then it's what I would call regular order or regular process, and rules apply in those respective bodies. The committees would have to act within 30 days, but once it goes to the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate, regular order applies at that time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is some of the evaluation criteria. Right down here at the bottom is what I just said. The committees have 30 days to act. Okay, so from the time they receive it, the Senate Finance and House Ways and Means would have 30 days to respond to their respective bodies. And that was a change right at the top. As I said, nothing can be construed as a waiver of any House or Senate rules. That was not in the House version or the Senate version. That was something that came out of free conference that says that what I just said, that normal order will apply, and that's how it'll be done, is under the rules of the House and rules of the Senate. The bottom, legislation shall be in the form of a resolution for a contract to sale or management or a bill to implement reform at Santee Cooper. That's normal order. That's the way things are done. What's not said there is it will not be part of the budget. It will be freestanding legislation. If any of these proposals come to the House or the Senate, it's freestanding legislation. It will not be as part of the budget. When I was here a couple weeks ago, the Senate had a provision that if there were any net proceeds after a sale of Santee Cooper, if they decided to sell Santee Cooper and there were net proceeds, the Senate said that those net proceeds would go to the retirement trust fund. The House amended that and said that if there were any funds left over, it would go to the general fund. Conference committee got together, and the conference committee has said that if a sale option is chosen and if there are proceeds left over, then the net proceeds will be deposited in a distinct numbered account outside of the general fund and not appropriated as part of the general appropriations bill. There will be a discussion within the House and the Senate of how to use those dollars outside of the budget discussion.
So, Richard, just a question on that. So, for example, if the sale proposal was advanced and it called for $800 million to be paid to represent the amounts owed for pension liabilities of Santee Cooper and/or the medical retiree benefits of Santee Cooper employees. That's not required to go into the retiree fund of the state, so the General Assembly can use that money for other purposes if they choose?
Director Ray, I believe that those dollars that you're referring to, if someone is covering that liability, it goes to those funds. What they're talking about here is after all that is done, after everything is done, if there is money left over, if there's profit for the state, for the taxpayer, after all of those things are done, then these dollars would be in a separate account to be discussed later.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Sorry I didn't make that clear. So that's where we are. That's the sort of the significant changes that occurred. There was a lot of work, a lot of discussion by that conference committee. From where I sat, it was a very good process and a lot of good discussion. And this is the process that we have that we'll be going forward with now. And I'll be glad to answer any questions or clarify anything that I said or address something that I may not have covered.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Richard.
Yes, sir.
Next up, we'll have Mr. Brogdon, and he will give a corporate planning update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Though the title indicates a presentation, it is obviously not that. It's simply truly an update. Though we've heard from Richard, I think for the first time, we finally have legislation that directs Santee Cooper to prepare its own proposal and submit it for evaluation by the Department of Administration. Though that's the first time that it's in legislation, it's not the first time we've had that discussed in the General Assembly. Going back to last fall, even in the ICF process, there were discussions with members of the General Assembly that at least there was the intent that Santee Cooper would always have that opportunity at the end of the day to compare itself to whatever proposals might be received from others. And so we believe that then, and so it certainly comes as no surprise to us that that is the case now. And because we knew that, we have been obviously undergoing an effort or taking up matters that we think would prepare us to do that when the time came. So lest there's any thought that we've been waiting to see what direction we got from the General Assembly, that's not the case. We've done a number of things. You've been aware of those things. I'm not going to highlight all of them. One of the things obviously would be the Vanry review and assessment of Santee Cooper. We created teams associated with the recommendations that came out of that. Those teams have been working and continue to work. I think we'll be seeing results from those hopefully in the very near future. The other thing that we have announced some while ago is that we are undertaking an energy cost sensitivity analysis, which will be a very important part of any proposal that we submit as it relates to, I guess, energy resources and their evaluation. So that's another effort. The other that you're aware of in the last 2 or 3 months we have begun is to have discussions with other utilities about ways we could cooperate with them to achieve efficiencies, either in terms of operations or generation. And we continue in those efforts and believe that there will be some results produced from those as well. So that's just a snippet of what we've been doing. Obviously, we've got a lot of, I think we have a number of teams across the company that are engaged in that. Obviously, this process will not be an ELT process driven alone. The board certainly will have input into the whole process. I expect that we will continue to bring in folks from across Santee Cooper who have an interest in assisting in these teams and make sure that we are open to all ideas and suggestions and try to figure out what the best approach is. You know, we have believed and continue to believe that Santee Cooper can demonstrate that it is still the best option going forward. Now is the time for us to do that, and I think we'll be prepared to do that at the end of this process. I'll be glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions? I think we'll probably have a little more discussion after the executive session on this, but anybody on the phone have any questions for Jim?
No.
Okay. Well, I guess at this point, we will, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss employment matters relating to the CEO search, to receive legal advice relating to new nuclear construction project litigation, to receive legal advice relating to the central coordination agreement, and to receive legal advice and discuss proposed contractual arrangements relating to VC Summers Units 2 and 3. Do I have a motion? Motion. Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We're in executive session, and I'll ask our visitors to wait outside, please. We are back out of, we've come out of executive session, and we'll want to note that there was no action taken in executive session, and Director Land made the motion, and Director Mudge seconded it, and it was unanimous. Okay, thank you all for your patience. We had several items to get through in executive session. And basically, we're done with the meeting. I want to ask if any board members have any comments before we adjourn.
I've got a couple. Molly, I would just like to point out that the Facts Are Facts program, I think, is being executed extremely well. It's being well received. I've received several telephone calls from folks in my part of the world that are most appreciative of the clarification that's bringing to a lot of important issues. So I would like to congratulate you and your staff for your input and express my appreciation and the appreciation of the board.
Thank you. We certainly welcome any guidance you have on that.
Great. And just one other point of personal privilege is, since this is Dan's first meeting taken over as chairman, I would just like to say, as an individual board member, it's my belief that there is no better qualified person with regard to financial background, business background, and temperament to assume the reins. And as we not only continue reform, but we accelerate into reform, there's no better person, in my opinion, in this state to lead this company at this critical time. So I appreciate Dan's leadership and his willingness to step up to the plate.
We agree.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your support and your trust in me. And with that, I'll make one final closing comment, and I asked Sandra if she would to just put up on the screen our mission statement, because I think that's the foundation of who we are as a company, and it's the guiding principles by which we serve our customers and honor our employees. And so as we move forward from here, I think it's fair to say that this board and this management team is committed to reform, and not reform as a proposal, but reform as an integral part of how we move forward as a company. And I think what we are committed to do is deliver on that. You'll start to see that soon. We're not going to wait till January or February to make a proposal for reform. We're going to institute reform as we can. And I was listening last week during the committee hearings, and I heard Senator Massey mention that he was surprised that we hadn't begun reform already. Very fair comment. I'll take that to heart. I think we all have felt a little bit paralyzed by the process that we've been through in particularly the last 6 months with the legislature in session. But we now know what the way forward looks like from that perspective, and we are all committed to reform. I think one of the things that I would highlight is we have a great organization. It has a rich heritage, rich history, and culture. And we have tremendous customers, loyal customers. We have great employees. And as we go forward, we have to honor our legacy, but we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to provide the best quality service, reliable, safe, affordable power to our customers, and that we honor our mission that's up on the screen. So as an acting chairman, I'm committed to that. I know our board is, I know our leadership team is, and we'll look forward to working with our partners and our customers going forward. And I would just say the proof is in the pudding, and it's on our shoulders to demonstrate that we can do this. So I appreciate all your support, and I'll look forward to working with everybody in the future. With that, we are adjourned.